Hi, everyone. It's an honor to be here today to talk to all of you and to Erez Kaganovitz on Yom HaShoah. And what I do, I have a podcast called Inside the Skev. I'm also a real estate agent, but I interview people around Skokie and Evanston, and I've interviewed the JCC, and I've done some different things for them for the Film Fest. And it's just, really learning about the human stories of people around the community. And today we're speaking with Erez Kaganovitz, and he has a project called Humans of the Holocaust, in addition to Humans of Tel Aviv, where he does, and he's going to talk about it, but he does these photojournalist stories about people, and Humans of the Holocaust is about survivors. And I think what's so important nowadays is as time goes on, it's important that we're able to share those stories from the next generations. And it's so powerful to have that through photographs and the stories. So, he has a background in working in the Knesset. He was also on Israeli News TV, and he's got a background in international studies and political communication from Hebrew U. But I'll let him talk more about it. But Erez, thank you so much for being here all the way from Israel today. And it's so cool that we're able to do this with technology, by the way. Erez, are you muted by any chance?
I think I was muted, but can you hear me right now?
Yes, we can see you too.
Well, thank you so much, for the presentation, and thank you for the kind words, and thank you everybody for joining us. I'm going to speak today about my project, Humans of the Holocaust, and I'm going to show you a couple of pictures and stories, and feel free, to ask questions. So it will be much more. One second, let's see if that's working. Okay, we can start. So once again, thank you so much for joining us. My name is Erez. I'm the creator of Humans of the Holocaust. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Erez Kaganovitz, and I'm the human behind the Humans of the Holocaust project. I was born and raised in Haifa, and I'm living in Tel Aviv for the past 10 years. I love photography and telling stories. And one of the things that I really love to do is to travel around the world. And why do I mention that I love traveling around the world? Before I created the Humans of the Holocaust project, I created a project called Humans of Tel Aviv. And while I was traveling around the world, most of the people didn't realize that I'm coming from Israel. And that is probably because of my accent, which I acquired after watching endless episodes of Seinfeld and Friends. And when you're traveling around the world, the first question that probably somebody is going to ask you is, where are you coming from? And when I told people that I'm coming from Israel, you could actually see how their facial expressions started to change. Ah, you're coming from Israel. Isn't it a place where people are getting exploited all the time? Or you're coming from Israel. Isn't that place where you're actually at perpetual war with your neighbors? And I was really upset. And I was really, I was really upset that people have these misconceptions about the place that I'm coming from. And I remember that I told myself that if I had the ability back then to actually take those people back with me to Israel, so, they can see in their own eyes what Israel is all about, I don't know, maybe, just maybe I will be able to change those misconceptions. But I couldn't really do that. So in 2012, I stumbled upon Humans of New York, and it was like a eureka moment for me, because I realized that this is exactly what I need to do. I need to create a project called Humans of Tel Aviv, so I will be able to show the diversity and the multiculturalism, the vibrant civil society that we have in Israel. And I created the Humans of Tel Aviv project. And luckily enough, I was privileged enough, to be invited to speak about the Israeli vibrant civil society. And I've been to a lot of places in the States and in Europe. And it's always, it's a great privilege, and it's really, fascinating that I had this ability to better inform and to better educate people about the place that I'm coming from. And because I was traveling, to the States, I was able to, get familiar with different Jewish communities around the States. And the thing is that, it was very interesting to see the process that there was really increase of anti-Semitism in the past 2 years. And one of the things that I stumbled upon a year ago was this headline, which said that 66% of young millennials in the States, not Jewish millennials, never heard about Auschwitz, and that 50% of those young millennials could not name even one ghetto or one concentration camp.
What do you attribute that to?
I think that, I think that the young generation, we're living in an era where you have this overflow of information. And you have Facebook, and you have Twitter, and you have Instagram, and you have Snapchat. And sometimes you feel that, you have too much information. And because of that, overwhelming sense of information, you don't have the ability to absorb a lot of information. And when you think about, even when you think about the Holocaust, it's a very tough subject. It's a very heavy subject. Think about the number, the sheer number of 6 million Jews who will perish in the Holocaust. I can tell you that, from my own point of view, I was born and raised in Israel. And my grandfather was a Holocaust survivor. And, in Israel, since, from first grade, you're starting to learn about the Holocaust. And I can tell you that for my own personal experience, it was hard. It's hard, to engage with that kind of a subject. So try to think about somebody, let's say living in Lexington, Kentucky, or somebody who's living in North Dakota. What is his, interest to learn about the Holocaust or to be engaged with that?
Right.
If for somebody, who's coming from Israel, you can find it difficult. So I think that, when I saw this headline, it was very, very upsetting. And I was trying to think what I can do, to better inform, to better educate people. And this headline about, the fact that people never heard about Auschwitz and Auschwitz-Birkenau, which is amazing in my eyes. It's only 70 years ago. And the fact that, you had this increase in the last few years about, about anti-Semitism in the States. So in one hand, you have this, people who doesn't have any knowledge about Auschwitz. And on the other hand, you have this, a crazy increase of anti-Semitism events in the States. In 2018, there were approximately 2,000 anti-Semitic attacks only in the United States. A third of American Jewry, are afraid, according to an ADL survey, they are afraid to walk in the public sphere, with Jewish symbols. So when you have these two motions, you have increase of anti-Semitism, and you have this lack of knowledge about what happened 70 years ago, it's a very dangerous combination. And I thought that I need to do something in order to better inform and to educate people about, about the Holocaust. And when you take into account the fact that, you had the Pittsburgh synagogue shooting almost a year and a half ago, and you have the Poway synagogue shooting. And actually, I had the privilege, I was in California, in Los Angeles a year ago, and I went to Poway. And I spoke to Rabbi Goldstein, and it was I could actually get the first encounter, and to learn from him about what happened in that shooting, and it was very emotional to me, because to see, from firsthand and to realize, what happened to him and the story about, how he actually stopped the shooter in the synagogue was very moving to me.
One thing
So,
living in Israel, and you see terrorist attacks that happen there, and then you see a terrorist attack happen in the United States from anti-Semitism. Is it a different feeling or reaction of Jews in Israel as compared to when it happens there in Israel?
Well, I can tell you that one thing that I learned, about, in the past 2.5 years that, I visited a lot of places in the States is the fact that, in Israel, you don't feel Jewish.
Hmm.
You feel Jewish, by definition, because it's a Jewish state. You know when Shabbat is going on, and you feel when Yom Kippur is, entering, because the whole state is like shutting down, exactly when you have, today with the Corona. But when somebody, who was born in Israel, and you actually go to outside of Israel, you start to feel Jewish. And when you have terrorist attacks in Israel, you don't feel that those terrorist attacks are because you're Jewish. Because you're Israeli and because you're living in the Middle East. And it's a very tough neighborhood. But when you are going, outside of Israel and you start to feel much more Jewish, you feel, what anti-Semitism is. Because in Israel, you don't feel anti-Semitism. The Jews in Israel are the majority. Approximately 80% of the population in Israel are Jewish. So you don't feel any kind of anti-Semitism. But when you're traveling outside of Israel, you definitely start to feel Jewish. And when I spoke with Rabbi Goldstein, I understand that the shooting was because, he was Jewish. It's a synagogue. But you don't get, those emotions in Israel. You always have in the back of your mind, the Holocaust, and you always have the back of your mind, the fact that it's a Jewish state. But I can say frankly that during terrorist attacks in Israel, you feel that it's attack about it's attack about Israel and not about your being Jewish.
Yeah.
And the thing is that I thought about sorry.
It's an interesting juxtaposition. It's just the difference in the view of it.
Yeah, it's something that, it took me a while to understand that, but only when you're traveling outside of Israel, you actually, get that feeling because, when you're living in the States or when you're living in Europe and you're not living in Israel, if you want to be Jewish, you have to put a lot of effort to be Jewish. You need to find a place where you can actually, get kosher food. If you want to go to the synagogue, you have to put a lot of effort to go to the synagogue. You have to do a lot of work actually to be Jewish. But in Israel, you're Jewish by definition, and it doesn't really, you don't need to do a lot of work in order to be Jewish. So I can tell you that, in my eyes about the humans of the Holocaust is when I saw all the numbers, the staggering numbers about the rising anti-Semitic attacks around the world. And I saw that survey that the Claims Conference did about the ignorance about Auschwitz. I realized that I need to do something like Humans of Tel Aviv. I need to create a project where people will be able to engage and people will, will be able to reconnect and the people will be able to find new angles and to make people much more interesting in what I'm actually, trying to show them. And usually when you think about the Holocaust, it's usually, it's black and white. It's very gloomy. It's very dark. And I thought that if I want to make, the young millennials, if I want to make young people that, will be able to engage and will be able to reconnect to the Holocaust, I will have to create, a project that will be, colorful. It will have to be, optimistic. It has to be with a different angle. Because, as we spoke before, about the flow of information, it's really hard to get the attention of people, these days. So in order to, to make people, better informed, better educated about the Holocaust, I thought that I have to create, in this project, I have to create a project which is actually, optimistic. And, a project with, universal messages that, you don't have to be Jewish in order to connect to this project. So I chose, I was looking for, interesting stories and something that will make people, think, and something that will make people, curious about what they're actually seeing. So for instance,
I love that picture.
What is your first, thought when you saw this picture, Aaron?
It's just like, it's like sarcastic humor in a way, because you know it's such the yellow star is such a horrible emblem of our memory, but he's like laughing with it because it's like, look at him, like look at me, like I'm using this as a like as a joke to you, to like, you know, against the Nazis in a way, and like he survived. I think that it's a, I don't know, it's almost like a source of pride.
Well, I think you're right. This is Dougal Leitner, and Dougal Leitner is a Holocaust survivor from Auschwitz. And when I spoke with him, you know, over the phone, and we were starting to think about how we are actually going to tell his story and how we are actually going to build the frame. He told me that the only thing that actually kept him going while he was in Auschwitz was his, you know, his sense of humor. And while we had our conversation, he told me, you know, we started to think about, you know, how can we actually portray your message? And he told me, you know, that it will be like a really interesting idea, you know, to take his picture with this, you know, with a yellow balloon, with the shape of the yellow star. And during our, you know, photo session, he actually, you know, he embraced the yellow badge, the yellow balloon. And he told me that, you know, if he had one message, you know, for people, you know, all over the world, is that no matter how hard is your life, and no matter what is going on right now in your life, if you will use your sense of humor, you will be able to find the resilience inside of you to actually, you know, overcome everything. And I think this is, you know, this is a beautiful picture with a beautiful message. And in my eyes, you know, it's a picture that you don't really expect to see in a Holocaust project or in a Holocaust exhibition. And this is exactly what I was aiming for. You know, because when you see this picture, something, you know, it's like a little bit something, you know, it's a little bit out of order. You don't expect to see this kind of thing in an exhibition about the Holocaust. And this is exactly what I was aiming for, because when somebody will see this picture, he will be interested. He will try to, you know, to figure out what is the story behind this picture.
Yeah,
And it's a very optimistic picture. So I really love this picture.
it's the one people gravitate to. And you know, you look at all the Jewish comedians that have, you know, come through over the years, and there's just something about it where we have the sense of humor that it's our way of coping through a difficult situation. So I love it that you have this photo. I can only imagine how do you keep a sense of humor though when you're going through that type of experience? I mean, did he talk about that, like what he would joke about just to keep himself like somewhat sane?
He told me that, you know, when he had the first deportation, and it was, you know, he was inside of the train, and he was started joking. You know, he was next to his father. He was almost 14 years old, and somebody was trying to, you know, everybody was so cramped, and he asked somebody, you know, do you have any ticket to show me during for this train journey? And that person, you know, almost slapped him because he didn't understand why he was trying to make a laugh of this, you know, dire situation.
Yeah.
But Dougal told me that, you know, the only thing, and he always kept mentioning it, and the fact that he had his sense of humor kept him alive. And I think it's a beautiful message, a very powerful message that every person in the world can connect to it, and you don't have to be Jewish in order to connect to it. And you're right, Aaron. You're right.
I've never heard about anybody having humor in the Holocaust, you know, to be able to keep them, to help them survive.
Exactly. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but in Israel, you have a lot of black humor concerning the Holocaust. And I don't know, you know, I think that probably in the States and in other places, you know, around the world, it will be, you know, people won't feel, you know, at ease with that black humor. But I can tell you that in Israel, you have a lot of black humor, but because as I told you, you know, in Israel, from, you know, from first grade, you are learning about the Holocaust, and it's like something that actually engulfs you. It's something of our Israeli DNA. And because you learn so much about the Holocaust, you know, you need sometimes, you know, even, you know, to laugh a little bit about that. And it's something that we do have in Israel.
Interesting. Yeah, makes sense.
So this is Dougal Leitner, and as I told you, about being optimistic, and this is the theater group called the Theyre, and they created a beautiful and very inspiring play about. They took the figures from the monuments of the Warsaw Ghetto heroes, and they actually gave them life on stage. And look at them, they're smiling. They gave them life, they gave them hope, and they were trying to for an hour and a half of the play, they were trying to give them the ability to speak, and to give them the ability to make other people to share with other people what happened to them, but in an optimistic way. And they were trying to to show a different angle. This is a very, very interesting story. Aaron, did you ever heard about Laila Jabarin?
No. Well, I did after I've been researching now. Yes. Yeah, but I did
So,
not.
okay,
Know about her.
okay. So you did your homework.
Yes.
Laila Jabarin was born in Yugoslavia, and she was born in a concentration camp, and she made Aliyah to Israel after the Holocaust, and she actually converted to Islam when she was 16 or 17. She met Muhammad, and it was puppy love, and she decided to marry him. And today she is living in Al-Fahim, which is a very large Arab city in Israel. And I took this picture a year ago on the eve of the Holocaust Memorial Day in Israel. And it was very surreal, to get to Al-Fahim and to find a Holocaust survivor. And it was really interesting, to speak with her. And she told me that 80 years ago, there were a lot of people in the world who were trying to kill her because she was Jewish. And we were starting to speak, about what happened, in the Holocaust. And we were speaking about, about what happened in Pittsburgh. And we also started to speak about what happened in Christchurch in New Zealand, the massacre that happened there in the mosques.
Yeah.
And she told me that, 80 years ago, people were trying to kill her because she was Jewish. And today there are a lot of people who would like to kill her because she's a Muslim. And she told me that, blind hatred, it doesn't matter if you're Jewish, and it doesn't matter if you're a Christian, and it doesn't matter if you're a Muslim. People who have blind hatred, they will try to kill you because of that blind hatred. And it's about time that, we'll actually, we'll address this issue. And, in the last International Memorial Day that was, in January, there was a big piece about Laila Jabarin in Washington Post. And, it was amazing. It was amazing to see all the reactions that people, had for her story.
What were some of the reactions? Were they positive, negative, shocked?
I think that a lot of people were shocked, and a lot of people said that, this is, her story. Supposed to be, supposed to, somebody in Hollywood is supposed to create a story, is supposed to create a movie out of her story because it's so unbelievable. And, I asked her a lot of questions, and think about the complexity of a Holocaust survivor who converted to Islam and living in Israel in an Arab city in Al-Fahim. And it's mind-blowing. It's actually mind-blowing because, in Israel, you have the week of today we're actually, commemorating the Holocaust, the Shoah Day in Israel. And next week you have Independence Day, and you have the Memorial Day for all the fallen Israeli IDF soldiers. So it's a very, very, tough and very intense week in Israel. And think about it, she has her own family in Al-Fahim, and she has her family, her Jewish family who are living all across Israel. And she's actually, she's between.
Has she ever thought about converting back to Judaism? Or, I mean, did she converted to Islam because of her husband, but is he still alive? And has she thought about switching back or anything?
I don't think she's in the age of, switching back. I find out that, she's a very clever person, and she's a person which is actually, she told me that, nobody can actually, nobody has the ability to choose his own destiny. And it's amazing that, that she, her life story is such an amazing story. But I think that, she's in a place where she's actually, she's okay, with her history, and she's okay, with her decision. And she's a very brave person, very, very brave person with her
I
decision.
want to ask you, you talk about Yom HaShoah and Yom HaAtzmaut and Yom HaZikaron that are coming up. And with what's going on with coronavirus, how are things being handled in Israel? I know that there was a protest yesterday against Netanyahu, and they X'd off the area where people can be so there could be social distancing. But Yom HaAtzmaut and all these holidays are very, they're vital to the country. So how are those things changing?
Aaron, I will put aside for a second, Yom HaAtzmaut. Think about, the Memorial Day for the fallen IDF soldiers. The government just issued an order. I think, I'm not sure they approve it, but this is the way that they're actually going to, moving forward to, is to actually ban parents from attending their sons' graves on the Memorial Day.
Wow.
And that's something that we never thought would be even possible. And there's a lot of criticism, and there's a lot of people think that this is too harsh, this is too crucial, and this is something that you need to give the ability for the family, for the parents, to come to pay their respects, for their sons. And it's there's a lot of debate right now in Israel about this. And I can tell you that, we are walking in a very, nobody knows actually, how to address this issue. Yom HaAtzmaut is the day where, everybody, is going outside to the parks, and everybody's celebrating, and everybody's barbecuing. And there's a lot of the social meetings. And today you come into a place where you need to celebrate. It's exactly like Passover. When you had to celebrate Passover in your own home. And it's something very difficult. It's something that you don't really know how to address. It's something that, if somebody would have told me, 3 months ago or 4 months ago, that something like this, will happen, and we will not be able to meet other people, and we will not be able to, to have Pesach together, and we won't be able to celebrate Independence Day, that will be, nobody would even, consider that as a possibility.
They think you're crazy.
That's the situation right now, unfortunately.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, it's, on the other hand, though, it does provide us this opportunity to speak around the world and with people, in Chicago, Israel, Toronto. I know you're all there. So I'm glad that we're still able to use the technology to do that. But she's an amazing story. I mean, and some of the other people that you've portrayed are also incredible.
This is the reason why I chose them, because I want to show a different angle, and we're speaking about incredible people. So,
yes.
This guy, why are you laughing, Aaron?
No, I mean, because I watched a TV show a year ago or so, and about the Mossad, and they interviewed him quite a bit. And when I saw him in your project, I chuckled a little bit, because I mean, he is such a badass. I mean, there's nothing else to say, really.
That's the right description about badass. And this is Rafi Eitan, and Rafi Eitan was a Mossad agent, and he is the person. He was the commander of the operation of capturing Adolf Eichmann in Buenos Aires in the 60s. And he actually brought him to justice in Israel. And, it's amazing, because, he told me that by the way, in Israel, you don't have death sentences like you have in the States, in couple of states in the United States. But in Israel, you don't have any death sentences. And the only person who was convicted to death in Israel was Adolf Eichmann. And he told me, Rafi Eitan told me, while we had our meeting, he told me that, he had a lot of operations in the Mossad. And the most emotional operation that he had the privilege to attend was actually the mission to bring back, to capture Adolf Eichmann and to bring him to justice in Israel. And
by the way,
is the daughter. This is the daughter. You see this guy over here?
Yes.
This is Gideon Hausdale. And Gideon Hausdale was the famous prosecutor with the famous speech about the 6 million Jews who actually, are, in this courtroom, for that matter, in Jerusalem. And the thing is that, this is Tami Raveh, and Tami Raveh is the daughter of Gideon Hausdale, and she is showing the famous speech that he actually, it was his opening remarks during the first session, and she told me, about the background, about how actually her father, was, trying to, he felt, the tension. And he felt, history, actually on his shoulder, because when he was thinking about, how to create that speech, he was thinking that he was not only addressing, the court, and it wasn't really, only addressing the judges in Jerusalem. He was addressing, the citizens of the whole world, because he knew this was, an historical event. And I can tell you that, that during this momentous event, in Israel, in Jerusalem, this trial gave a lot of Jewish and gave a lot of Holocaust survivors the ability to actually speak about what happened to them during the Holocaust. And it was really, really important, when you think about, you have the stories of the Holocaust survivors, before the Eichmann trial and after, because this is for the first time. It gave them the ability to, to open their hearts and to share their stories about what happened in the Holocaust. And until then, nobody spoke about it. So it was really, really important. It was really important in Israeli history.
It was a moment for people to grieve and to reconcile what had happened. And I feel like when people, there's going to be another interview I'm doing tomorrow with somebody who made a movie called Surviving Skokie, which is where I'm located, about the Nazis that wanted to march in the late 1970s. But it really talks about how the survivors who all came to the area weren't speaking before about it. And, finally, they opened up and they started to organize. And it's like, I think in Israel, when Eichmann was brought to trial, it started to bring that out and people were able to cope and work through it.
Yeah, exactly. And you need to figure out that, when Holocaust survivors came here to Israel, everything was, quiet. Nobody wanted to talk about it. There was a big sense of shame. There was not even, psychologically wise, nobody, sent them, to psychologists or therapists. Everything, was, kept, under, this lid. And when this trial, went on and it was broadcast, on radio, everything exploded, and people started talking and people started to share stories about what happened. And I think it was a very interesting, point in Israeli history when they actually, they gave, the Holocaust survivors the ability to share their stories, and they gave them the ability to actually, to be recognized and to get recognition about what happened to them in the Holocaust. And that's really crucial.
Absolutely.
You ever heard about Eva Cole Moses? Eva Cole Moses, 3 years ago, it was amazing because when I saw this headline, it was amazing because Eva Cole Moses had an interview for BuzzFeed 3 years ago, and she actually, she broke the internet. It went viral because on her interview she actually forgave Mengele. She was in Auschwitz, and she was part of the Mengele was Joseph Mengele was a Nazi doctor, and he had a lot of experiments on twins because the Nazis wanted to see how they will be able to create much more, Germans. Really interesting, about the study of twins. And when she came to Auschwitz, they actually took her, for special research and experiments. And the thing is that she found in her heart, the ability to forgive Mengele and to forgive Nazis and to forgive what happened to her in Auschwitz. And that's crazy. And there were approximately 120 million views of people from all around the world that actually saw that interview. And there was a lot of criticism, as you can even think that a lot of people said that from where do you find the ability to forgive Nazis? And the thing is that it's an amazing philosophy, because in the bottom line, Eva Cole Moses, her philosophy was that in order that I will be able to set myself free, and in order that I will be able to move on in my life, I have to forgive Mengele, and I have to forgive the person that actually made this for me, all these atrocities. And there was a lot of criticism, and a lot of people were thinking, how can you actually come out with this statement? And she said it, this is actually this is a personal forgiveness. She's not forgiving in the name of all of the whole Jewish people, but this is her own decision. And I think that you need to have a lot of courage and a lot of courage to actually to go public with this kind of a statement. And this is exactly what when I was speaking about interesting stories about I was trying to figure out the news of the Holocaust. It was this this story is an amazing story, because you don't have to agree with Eva Cole Moses, and you can agree and you can even disagree. But when you have this kind of a story, you make people engage, and people are interested, and you creating a debate about if you're supposed to forgive or you're not supposed to forgive. And I'm putting aside that question, but the fact that she was able to get her message across, that other people will be able to speak about the Holocaust and to engage with the Holocaust. Think about the number. It's amazing, 120 million views from all over the world. So it means that it actually it actually struck a chord
Major
that people heart. And I think this is exactly the discussion that we need to engage, and this is exactly the discussion that we need to have about the Holocaust. Because if we won't do that, okay, they will say, okay, it's the Holocaust, and they will just pass it along. So I think she did an amazing work, by trying to put on the headlines. She actually made it possible that people will speak about the Holocaust, which is it's amazing in my eyes.
In your eyes, I want to ask you, you're someone who studied international relations. I see your modus operandi is to make an impact on the world. And you worked at Knesset, you worked on TV. Why do you think your photo projects are so much more impactful? Because obviously you think that, because that's where you're putting your efforts into.
So once again, what is the question?
So I mean, you've had experience working on a TV channel. You've worked in the Knesset. You know, where they're very impactful types of places. But you focus your efforts on humans of Tel Aviv and humans of the Holocaust. And my question is, you know, have you seen much more of an impact in what you're doing by doing this? Because personally, I think this evokes such emotion, you know, being able to share these stories. It's so important what you're doing. I mean, is that what you found through your work?
I can tell you, you know, the best answer that I can give you for this is this picture. I posted this picture on the International Memorial Day of the Holocaust, I think probably 5 years or 6 years ago, and it just went viral. You know, it reached more than 1 million people across the world. And this is the Holocaust number of Yaakov Diamond, an Auschwitz survivor. And if you will look closely, you will see a tiny diamond next to the number. And actually in German, diamond means diamond. And it went viral. And I got a lot of messages from the Arab and Muslim world, from people who told me, listen, this is the first time we ever heard about the Holocaust. And this is the first time we realized why the state of Israel was actually, you know, established. And I was really, you know, I was really emotional about that. I was really moved because it showed me that when you have a good picture and when you have a good story and you make this, you know, this kind of a synergy, and you have the ability to actually to connect to people. And you spoke earlier about, you know, about my work in the Knesset and about, you know, TV. And I can tell you that, you know, the most amazing experience and the most amazing reactions that I got you know, through photography and through, you know, stories like this. And when you have the ability, you know, to actually touch people, you know, and you have the ability to actually, you know, to show them, you know, a picture, and you make an interesting picture, a fascinating picture, and you make them, you know, try to think about what they are seeing, you know, this is, you know, in my end, you know, in my point of view, this is exactly, you know, what I was aiming for. And, you know, it's amazing that, you know, we have this ability. And you know, it's when you have that ability and when you have that, you know, when people are seeing that picture and they're like, you know, they're you consider their mind, you know, start working. I know that I was able to accomplish what I was aiming for.
What a great feeling.
Yeah, exactly. Because, you know, you have the ability to better inform, to better educate people, and to show them something that they, you know, they didn't thought about it. And I can tell you that, you know, we were speaking about, you know, the 66% of the young millennials that never heard about Auschwitz. When they will see a picture like this, they will start to think, they will start to question, they will start to ask themselves questions. And if I have, you know, the ability to actually, you know, to make them, you know, ask those questions, you know, I feel that, you know, I did my part.
And those the picture there are the descendants of the survivor, right?
Those are the grandkids. Those are the offsprings of Yaakov Diamond. They're all young. They're actually, you know, the grandkids. And Arik, which is in the front line of the picture, when he told his grandfather Yaakov that he's actually going to do the tattoo, his number, Yaakov was his grandfather was really shocked. Are you seriously going to do that? And, you know, during their conversation, Arik told him, "Listen, I'm going to do this because I think, you know, this is the way to commemorate your story and the memory of Holocaust survivors." And the grandfather asked him, "Arik, when your grandkids and when your kids going to see this number, are you going to tell them about me? Are you going to tell them about what happened to me in the Holocaust?" And when Arik, you know, the grandkid, heard that question, and he told me that that was exactly the moment when he realized that he had to do that. And later on, he actually, you know, convinced all of the family, you know, to all of the grandkids to have this tattoo. And think about it, we're speaking about, being Israeli and being Jewish. According to Judaism, you're not allowed to tattoo anything on your body. So in Israel, you had a lot of criticism. On one hand, you had a lot of people who said that this is a very emotional and very important way to commemorate the memory of the Holocaust survivors. And you had a lot of people who said, this is not Jewish. This is something that Jewish are not supposed to do.
Right, you're not even supposed to be buried in the same section of the Holocaust, or not
Exactly.
the cemetery. Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. But once again, I think that when you're taking this kind of stories, you're creating a discussion, and I much prefer to show this kind of stories that actually engage a discussion than to have stories that that people won't relate to.
I mean, by doing what you're doing, you're helping really to spur knowledge amongst the public, not just the Jewish public, but the globe. And if people have knowledge, then that is your hope that you can prevent another type of Holocaust. And also, I'll follow up with that. Are you hoping to give inspiration to other groups of people who have gone through similar traumas, like let's say, genocides in Africa or Cambodia or things like that? I mean, there's been a lot of awful things that have happened around the world. Have you inspired people to do other types of projects or seen things similar?
The only thing that I can say that I'm doing in my own humble way, it's to I'm taking my camera and I'm taking my computer and I'm interviewing people, and I'm trying to. The thing is that I feel like I'm usually I will take some kind of a metaphor that we use in Israel, in soccer. In soccer, you play like 90 minutes. And when you're getting into the last minute of the game, it calls like injury time. And I feel that, right now, I'm a little bit at injury time if I want to, to have this project, because, all of the Holocaust survivors, their average age is, it's almost 84, 85. And I have this, I have this urge, and I have this, this feeling that I have to capture as many stories as I can, because in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years from now, you won't have a lot of the Holocaust survivors that you will be able to interview. And speaking about interviewing in the time of Corona,
Yeah,
it's really hard. I can tell you that right now I stopped all the interviews that I had for this project, because all of the Holocaust survivors, they're 85, 86. It will be too dangerous, for them to meet me, or even to take a picture. So I really hope, that they will find, some kind of a cure, or some kind of a vaccination that we will be able to move forward from this period of time of Corona. But I can tell you that it's you have this in Judaism. You have this saying that if you save one soul, it's like you save the whole world. So in my eyes, if I had the ability to touch one person and to make him think about the Holocaust, or think about the global message that we all need to learn about the Holocaust, and about about blind hatred, for me it will be everything. It will be okay. This is exactly what I was aiming for.
yeah, yeah. No, I think it's a noble goal. I just want to ask if anyone else in the audience has any questions. Please put it through to the chat. But please tell us about this picture. This is fascinating.
This is Donna. She's a puppet. Let me help me to. She actually, she makes puppets. And the thing is that she saw the pictures of her relatives who were perishing in the Holocaust, and she decided to create these puppets in their according to the old pictures that she had. And, it's amazing. It's amazing the way that people are trying to commemorate the memory and how they are trying to bring them alive. And she actually, this is, she made it possible. She brought them alive, because when you look at the puppets, they look they look so alive. They look like, it's something that you're not expecting to see during a project like this.
Her picture, by the way, she is so somber in that. I mean, how was your conversation with her?
I can tell you that, she was, it was really interesting, because, she was, it took me, it took her a while, until she, she touched that kind of, it took her a while until she actually, started to tell the story over her family. But if we're speaking about families, one of the most, emotional interviews that I had, during this Humans of the Holocaust project, was with Liora Danieli. And Liora Danieli is actually, she's actually the daughter of Tzipora. And she told me about her experience about, being like second generation. You ever heard about that term, second generation?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So the thing is that, during our photo session, she told me that for her, it was really hard to live in that house. And she told me about, about this, about how bread was so special in that house. And we decided to, to create this picture. And the text that she sent me, she told me that, she opened up a lot of wounds that she had during, living in Netanya, living in Israel as a second generation. She told me about the shame. She told me about, how she has to be all the time, like this good girl. And she couldn't, she didn't get a lot of candies. And there were always, in the background, there was always, the stories of the Holocaust. And it was really hard for her. And it was really emotional. And, it was really interesting to get her story.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I want to tell you that, this is Batsheva Dagan, and Batsheva Dagan, she is a Holocaust survivor from Auschwitz, and she's a storyteller, and she was a teacher in kindergarten, and she decided to write books about the Holocaust. And she wrote, I think she wrote about 5 or 6 books who were actually, for kids. And because she, as a kindergarten, she had to actually she needed to find a way how to tell the story of the Holocaust for, that kind of age. And she told me that, for her, the story was always really optimistic. And she told me like this beautiful line saying that, for her, every Holocaust survivor is actually, it's a happy end. And because they managed to survive, and they managed, to build their lives, and they managed to, to create new families, and they manage in some way to move on with their lives. And I think that, I think that she's right. I think that in the bottom line, every Holocaust survivor, in the bottom line, in the end, it's a happy end. And it's optimistic end. It's very optimistic because they manage, to pull themselves, together, and they manage to actually to build families, and they manage, to move on. And that is, that is amazing in my eyes.
Yeah, they're stories of hope. I mean, how did you find these people? How did you reach out to them? And, are there some people that you interviewed that you didn't put into the exhibit?
Well, I can tell you that, luckily enough, because I was a journalist, and because, I worked in journalism, you have to have a lot of abilities to do research. And so, luckily enough, I can tell you that, with Google, and, you just need to find the right stories. And, I looked, in a lot of archives, and I looked a lot, a lot of interviews with other Holocaust survivors. And I was, I was aiming, for stories like Laila Jabarin and like Dougal Leitner and like stories that, like Nicole Moses, stories that will make you think, stories that will make you ponder, stories that will make you, to look, to stop whatever you're doing and to pay attention to what you just saw right now.
They're pretty amazing stories. One question that came from the audience just now is, have you ever heard a story of a German trying to reconcile with the Jews that you've interviewed or talked to?
So far, I didn't have a story of somebody, who was German or somebody who was trying to reconcile, with Judaism, but I'm aiming for, that, before the Corona, I was planning to go to Germany and to have a couple of sessions and to have a couple of interviews in Berlin. But unfortunately, with the shutdown and with the coronavirus, it's just not possible right now.
No, things are shifting. We're going to wrap up, but I just want to, give you the final word on what you want to impart with people as we take it away during this time and during Yom HaShoah.
I can tell you that, this project and the thing that I decided to create this project was, that we spoke in the beginning about the 66% of young millennials that never heard about Auschwitz and the 50% of young millennials that could not name even one ghetto or a concentration camp. This project is aiming for those people, for that generation, because, it's really easy, to speak to the choir. And it's really easy, to stay, the comfort of the Jewish world. But what I'm really aiming in this project is actually, to get outside of the Jewish world. I would love to see this project, as a traveling exhibition. And I would love to see this exhibition, going into mosques and going into churches and going into public schools and going into universities. Because, those young millennials are in those places. And if we want to engage with those people, and if we want to actually to reconnect, that generation, so we will be we will be better informed, we will be better educated, and we will be able to teach, that generation about the lessons, the lessons that we are all supposed to learn from the Holocaust. You have to go there. You have to go out there. And I really hope that, when this coronavirus will end, I will be able to do so.
I really hope so too. In the meantime, if everyone wants to look at the photos and the stories, go to humansoftel-aviv.co.il and then go to, there's a button there for Humans of the Holocaust. You could also look at Humans of Tel Aviv. You could follow it on social media. There's the links on the website. And just for anyone who wants to tune in at 2 o'clock, we are going to be having another program of Violins of Hope. It's going to be a fascinating conversation. And, we really appreciate everyone here joining from around the world. It's quite the honor. And, Erez, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to everybody today.
Thank you so much for having me. And it was a pleasure.
It absolutely was. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Okay.